All right. Welcome to Inside the Grind podcast, the podcast for people building real coffee shops. Every episode, we sit down with someone who's deep in the day to day, hiring, fixing, worrying, making hard choices, and still showing up to serve. These are honest stories from founders in the thick of it. No fluff, no ego, just the real grind and what's getting them through. If you're building something on your blog, this one's for you. Brought to you by Coffee Futures Fund.
Let's go back to Coffee Futures Fund because also curious, and this is also a personal question because I'm curious. We are you're leading, we are thought partnering on creating this program, which we are so excited about, and I'm grateful for. If you were to give it a name or a thought in terms of, okay, this is what's driving me, this is what I'm sort of my guardrails are when I'm thinking about the program, this is what I want to take care of or want to ensure that I sort of check the box on when I'm creating the program, the 10-week program. Anything come, and possibly it's nothing that comes to mind, but does anything come to your mind?
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
What comes to mind when I think of how we're creating the Coffee Futures Fund 10-week program is community at the end of the day. Like, I think it's, if we can create a community amongst the cohort of folks who are involved, between the mentors and everyone who kind of comes after as well too, I think that to me is kind of like one of the North Stars, like one of the guardrails, I think, to use your words, is so important. But I think it also extends beyond that, because I think by joining a community like Coffee Futures Fund also helps sort of create a community, because that's what you're doing when you have your coffee shop, is that you are creating this community that you're welcoming, the public into. And so I think they kind of work side by side of like, hey, I'm hoping that we do create this community where folks do feel less alone, where they feel supported, where they feel like they can nurture their coffee companies. But then I also hope that we're helping you create the communities in your community, right? This sort of microcosm, this place that people can come and think about coffee mugs or think about bigger pressing issues of the day.
Yeah, that's so cool. Community. That's what we're doing. That's what we're here for. Exactly. Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. I often think, and not just think about it, this has been my sort of the North Star when I started the idea of Coffee Futures Fund, which was, it's a fund, it's an investment fund, but it's not a typical venture capital fund. And because having spent so much time in the industry and talking to people and learning about their stories and the realities of the situation, I wanted to, in my head, I always made that distinction, right? So the way we see a coffee shop business, the way we see a coffee shop owner, the way we see the community, and how we want to place our fund in their lives to uplift them, to support them, to solve problems, make lesser mistakes, find a community of peers. That's what I feel defines us as different from a typical fund, right? So, like I say, it's a fund, but it's not a fund, right? Not a typical fund. How do you see that from, that your vantage point, your industry experience, and you seeing the global spectrum of things in the coffee industry? How do you see this, if you are to be candid?
Yeah, I see it as sort of a nice, or just like a really wonderful opportunity and an additional path, because you do see there's so many different paths as a coffee shop owner that you could take to survive, to find support, to find help. And a lot of it, I think, takes a lot of, is a little more taxing. It's a little more demanding. And whether it is looking to more traditional venture capital, right? They're looking for fast exits and like lots of a revenue return and growth and things like that is, almost impossible to achieve. Or is it a loan, a bank loan that, has very rigid and specific terms that need to come in and not really offering you the community? Or, is it asking your family members for some money and accidentally maybe taking on some like silent partners who are like, why are you spending our money that way? Things like that. Or is it crowdfunding? So I think there's so many different paths that you can take in order to help and support your business. But I think CFF is really unique in the sense of like, it is this sort of, it's like a helping hand versus like just a handout or a demand or things like that. And I think that really sets it apart. That, yeah, I'm hoping really, we'll see it thrive and we'll continue to see it grow.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of trailed off there.
More to come. The picture is not over yet. So, exciting journey ahead. What would you recommend? I mean, why would you recommend, or what would you say to people that, hey, this is the reason why you should apply to CFF?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, I hope it's not sounding too repetitive, but I think it's that sense of like that community, that feeling less alone. And that's what I hear from friends who are coffee shop owners, from friends who have been in a business in some sort of ownership or founder capacity for the longest time. They all come back and say, it's a little bit lonely. It's always nice to know that you're not alone. And there's ways, there's different ways to go about it. Like I think oftentimes going to local events, like going to an expo or a trade show, or there's ways to find that. But I don't necessarily think it's always tailored specifically to helping you as the individual owner sort of thrive and really speaking to your specific needs as a coffee shop owner. So it's that sense of, yeah, you're not alone and you're supported. And if we sound like a broken record, then I think I'm fine with that, because I think that's a message that folks should hear,
Great.
endlessly. Hey, you're not alone, that you can reach out, that it's not, we're not reinventing the wheel here.
So true. I like that. Um, um, what the future of coffee? What do you see? What will the future of coffee look like?
Yeah. I wish I could sort of forecast, and I wish I had a crystal ball to know what the future of coffee would look like. But I think that's also what energizes me, is because I think we get to create it. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think that's what also is, I think what keeps me in coffee, and why I have so much hope for coffee, is the sense of, coffee comes from a very colonial history, and we've spent hundreds of years in sort of a cycle, but we still have the capacity for change. Like we still have sort of awareness, right? Self-awareness, where we don't have blinders on as an industry where we're like, oh, we're perfect. Like no changes, no notes, but that we are striving to get better and we want to do better. And it's, I think at all levels, from sort of that producing sort of seed to cup sort of thing. It's like everyone is working on how can we get better in sort of their context in their world. And because it is such a global industry, right? You can't not pay attention to things around the world. You can't, sitting in your coffee shop thousands of miles away from where the coffee's grown. You don't, you get to still be able to connect to that and think about that and be like, how can we make change? How can we do things better? And so my hope for sort of the future of coffee is that we continue to embrace diversity and sort of differentiation, I think, is often the buzzword. But I think that in and of itself, and being able to not just have, one view, one perspective, one type of coffee, but to be able to sort of welcome in different perspectives, different ways of doing things, different coffees, that's the future. Like we need to embrace that just to deal with all the challenges.
Be adaptable, stay closer to people, and just serve people. I like that. If you were to give one piece of advice to a young person who's just starting their journey, a young kid, a college student, just starting the journey in the coffee industry, not sure about where they want to go, but just like the Julie back in the day when she explored that vanilla latte, and then whoa, this is awesome. Right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
One piece of advice, if you had to share.
Never just one. It's usually a list of advice, because I also feel like you can't always hear things, right? When you're younger, you can't, what sticks and what kind of like becomes true varies. And so, when I teach people latte art, for example, like I tend to say a lot of things, and we do a lot of things, and we try to just practice and practice, because I find that it's just not one thing that you say that's going to click for people when it comes to pouring latte art or steaming milk and things. It's sort of different for everyone. And so it's hard to say what piece of advice, like one piece of advice, but I know the advice that I tend to give folks, that I feel like I've given for a long time, is that there are so many possibilities in coffee. And so if you are new into coffee, if you're a younger barista, a younger person who's like, this is just a job, like that is totally okay that it's just a job, but that it's also that sense of, what are you interested in? Like sort of what coffee might be a passion for you. It might be an interest, it might not be, but you probably also have other interests and passions. And whatever those are, I feel like there's a way to pursue that with coffee. If you're interested in like healthcare or the medical field, like there are ways to pursue that with coffee, whether it potentially is just sharing like information like, hey, coffee's actually healthy for you, like it's good for you, or it's, working with nonprofits that are helping to prevent and detect cervical cancer in farmers and producing coffee regions. Like those are things that, like, those are ways to me to pursue healthcare, but also you're still pursuing coffee as well. I mean, my own story, I always say, my background's in politics. I was in DC working on Capitol Hill, and, I thought this is my life. It's going to be politics. And I found coffee, and I feel like I do coffee politics. I've worked for the Specialty Coffee Association, which is kind of like a political organization in coffee. Like I keep up with, and I really have studied the International Coffee Organization. Like there's that angle where I'm like, hey, I'm still doing politics, working with folks and trying to get things over the line is political. And so I'm like, I feel like I'm pursuing politics alongside coffee. And so that's always my advice, I think, is like, hey, if you do have a passion, there is a way to combine them with coffee if you want to. And it's not just, I have to be a barista or I have to take this one specific path. There's lots of ways to combine coffee with things that you also love too. So.
Wow, that's awesome. Actually, I'm learning a lot. I am actually learning a lot of things because, yeah, you're right. There's no one traditional path. There are so many ways, and you can bring your own unique interests and combine that with coffee because that's what you want to do, and then make a beautiful bouquet out of it. So that's solid advice.
I'm like, I hope it helps someone or has helped someone along the way.
Sure, it'll help a lot of people. What about, again, as someone who's just starting out in the industry, they're just still figuring out, okay, what I want, what do I not want, what's my strength, etc. How to reach out to, I think, because, going back at the early days of my own journey, one of the questions was in my head, okay, I'm thinking about so many things. Who do I talk to? I wish I had this one person I could ask all the questions. But then I don't know what exact question to ask because there are so many things in my head, super unstructured. So yeah, help me with that.
Yeah.
Help me as a young kid. How do I maneuver or find a path by talking to people?
Yeah, I mean, I would talk to people. I think folks are often afraid to talk to people or think, oh, I can only talk to this one person. I can only go after the person who's at the pinnacle, or I see as the pinnacle of something. I can only go after, the coffee celebrity, or I can only talk to my manager. Like, how dare I even talk to someone? I think there's that sense of talk to a lot of people, talk to different people. Like, and don't be afraid to reach out to folks. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever received that wasn't necessarily offered as like advice per se, but the mantra is the second best answer is no, right? So best case scenario is that you get the yes, you get someone who's like, I will sit down and talk to you about coffee. And second best answer is no. And worst case, people don't say anything. They don't write you back. They don't give you an answer you can hear or that doesn't quite answer your question. But talking to folks and like not being afraid to reach out, I think is important. And there's different ways to do it, right? Because then we could probably talk for a whole hour about what's the best way to do that. And so I think there's a way to be mindful about it. But I feel like by talking to folks, it's like I discover so much about myself and about other things that even if I don't have a question, but I think of like when I go to coffee events or community events, or even if I'm at a coffee shop, I'm just like waiting for my drink to come up. It's interesting to kind of engage with barista if they have time, right? To be like, oh, what are you making? What shot are you pulling? What are you thinking about? Like, so. And I think that kind of gives you so many answers. And so not being afraid to just talk to folks. And that's also usually my advice when you go to events. It's like, just talk to people. Worst case, they're not going to talk to you back. And like best case, you make a new friend and you kind of go, oh, you never know who you're standing next to.
I like that. I like that a lot because that's so true. Because as soon as we drop this inhibition of, what will people say, what people will judge me, etc., based on my stupid question or whatnot.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We can just feel free that, oh, it's okay to not know anything. And that's the beauty of it. Be curious, go to people with questions. It's easier to go to people with questions and have them answer than the other way around. I think that's a fun place to be in. So just embrace that not knowing and that curiosity.
Or just knowing, even if you think you do know like the answer to a question, a lot of times it's interesting to get someone else's perspective and understand how they approach the thing. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I'll even just sort of ask questions that I'm like, I might know this, or like it's an obvious question, but you never really know. And so I'm not afraid to ask dumb questions because I might not be the only one in the room going, that's not quite making sense to me.
Question is a dumb question. As they say, the question that you're thinking, that you're asking, 100 people are thinking the same question. So it's the only you were asking that question, but a lot of people that question. Anyway, all right. I think on that note, on that fun and learning note, we'll wrap up this conversation, a fun little chat with Julie from Coffee. And soon to be Julie from Coffee, which is fun. Let's go.
Alrighty.
That's it for this episode of Inside the Grind. If something here helped, make sure to subscribe and pass it to another coffee shop or a friend. We all need each other more than we admit. To learn more or join the community, head to coffeefutures.fun. This movement is just getting started. Until next time, keep growing. your shop matters more than you know.